Hey guys, what's up? Alright, so I've been struggling to make this Sonic Frontiers review, mainly because I have a lot of stuff to say and a lot of things I want to cover in this game. So this is going to be a long review, so grab some popcorn because I don't even think I'll be able to cover everything in this game. There's just so much I wanted to talk about with Sonic Frontiers. I was running into writer's block and all of that. Like, I just did not know how to begin and how to end this review. So here goes nothing. I put every single detail and point that I wanted to talk about with this game. So let's begin. But before I do, be sure to smash the like button, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff. Let's see if we can get to 100k subs. Alright, so the whole marketing of this game has been quite the roller coaster of good and bad. Looking back, it's safe to say that this was the worst marketing Sega's ever done for a mainline Sonic game, which only ramped up in the last minute. Like right now, they're really promoting this game. I even saw like a Sonic Frontiers commercial the other day, and that was awesome. That reminded me of like the 90s style, type of marketing for Sonic games. Now, the sales of the game have been the highest than any Sonic game in decades due to the popularity of the movies, putting Sonic back in the mainstream limelight, which hasn't been seen since Sega was a first-party company. Now, I believe that Sonic Frontiers is a reset that the franchise desperately needed, but it could have been better, and it should have been better. And I will explain why I feel this way, and why I rated the game the way I do, which I will do in the end of the video. Now, when I compare the pros and cons of Frontiers, it reminds me a lot of Sonic Unleashed. Both games share heavy similarities. Like, for instance, when it comes to Sonic Frontiers and Unleashed, both games changed the formula for future games. Both were very ambitious games, dealt with Chaos Emerald lore, featured combat, only boost games with no wisps. I mean, think about it when it comes to the console games. Eggman using ancient tech he doesn't fully understand. Both feature a character who sacrifices themselves to save Sonic, Chip, and Sage. And other things other people added was that both games also feature Sonic suffering from a curse, Werehog and Unleashed, Cyber Curse or whatever, the Cyber Energy in Frontiers. And also, both Sonic Frontiers and Sonic Unleashed were massive shifts to compensate for how bad the game before them was. Sonic Unleashed came out after Sonic 06, Sonic Frontiers came out after Sonic Forces. Now, the Unleashed effect is very evident in this game too. The most varied, mixed, and polarizing critical scores a Sonic game has gotten in a long time. I think the last time I checked, the highest score for Frontiers was like an 80 on a PC. It went down to 79. And Xbox Series X, it went up from like 56 to 58. So that's the most polarizing a Sonic game has gotten in a long time. I think since Sonic Genesis or something like that. Now, since 2016, I've been wanting an open world Sonic game. Ever since I played Lego Sonic Dimensions. I've said this several times on my channel. In fact, early last year, before we got the first trailer, I predicted that the next original Sonic game would be an open world game, because this was the direction several legacy platformers were headed to, from Zelda to Mario to Pokemon, etc. So it only seemed fitting for Sonic to do this, and after Lego Sonic Dimensions, I knew this could work very well. Now, I'll cover the three main aspects of this game, the music, story, and gameplay. Let's start with the music first. After listening to a lot of the tracks in this game, this is the first time I went to buy the official album of a 3D Sonic game. This is definitely a top 5 Sonic soundtrack for me, and replaces Colors as my top 3 Sonic soundtracks. This is a huge step up above Sonic Forces, for sure. Now, if you guys remember, I did a review of that game 5 years ago, and I hated the soundtrack. From classic Sonic's shitty sounding music, to modern Sonic's overuse of the synth, the only soundtracks that were decent were the Avatar tracks, and even then, they weren't my favorite. The score was solid though, and I loved a lot of the orchestral music, but Frontiers tops that and has a soundtrack almost as varied as Unleashed in variety. The island themes reflect the environments as well, from Kronos to Ares and even Chaos Island. The Supersonic battle themes were a highlight too in gameplay and music. And the coolest thing about the Supersonic themes is that, when you first hear it, you think that this is about the monster, like the Titans. It's from their point of view, but it's actually from Sonic's point of view. So it makes Sonic very menacing, and it actually follows that whole plot about Sonic being the quote-unquote villain of the game. I'll get to that later. The vocal themes really elevated this game, and I love the hard rock music during the Supersonic boss fights. It just proves that we don't need Crush 40 anymore for this. The lyrics are also not cheesy like Fist Bump or Light of Hope or even Infinite Steam and Forces. Now, the biggest compliment I can give the soundtrack to Frontiers is you can play this music out loud in public without getting embarrassed by the lyrics. You know, nothing cheesy in it, especially with Vandalize, which is a fan favorite track last time I checked. And last but not least are the EDM tracks for the cyberspace stages. And Otani definitely improved on EDM from Forces. He definitely took the criticism well because even the synth sounds nice in this game and isn't overused. Now, I'm not a huge fan of EDM. I did dabble in the music genre back in the day during the 2000s. I loved most of the 30 cyberspace tracks in this game, only 3 of them I disliked. But Otani really went above and beyond with the amount of tracks in this game. My favorite is 1-4 Genshi, 2-1, I forgot the title of that. And yeah, there's a couple other tracks too. I might have to make like a tier list of the cyberspace stage tracks because a lot of them go hard. You know, it's a crime how this game wasn't nominated for best music and score for the Game Awards. But then again, Sonic music always gets overlooked, so this is no different. Alright, now let's discuss the story, because one of the biggest disappointments in Forces was its half-assed and disappointing story. Ever since Pontac and Graf left and Ian Flynn joined to write the story for Frontiers, I've been following the leaks very closely. The story's decent. It's not the best Sonic story ever made, not even close, but it is the best Sonic story we've gotten in a game since Black Knight in 2009. Now, the story excels the most in character development than anything else. It really shows a lot of growth from these characters like Knuckles, Amy, and Tails, and it's just amazing to see how they acknowledge their past, both their flaws and their strengths, and they grow from here. It's like Frontiers was like the starting point to take these characters to new directions in the future, and this is the first time I can't wait to see the future of these characters simply from the story. Like, Ian Flynn did a great job with the dialogue here, so, and there was jokes in this game, but it wasn't forced. And also, finally, Sonic is shonen again. You know, this is what I've been talking about for years. Since 2019, I've been wanting Sega to take Sonic back to his shonen roots, and it's finally come true. And it started with Frontiers Prologue Divergence. That Knuckles animation, I already gushed about that in one of my previous videos, so you guys can click on that video. But yo, since then, I knew we were in for a real treat with the story. Now, before I continue with the story, first and foremost, this is proof that Sonic Rose was a thing. Here's a clip.
Wish we were sharing an umbrella, Amy. Amy, I should have made up my mind sooner.
Now, from Edward, one of my followers, he says, Sonic talks about wishing he was sharing an umbrella with Amy, and wishes he made up his mind sooner. That's a lot of Sanemi feel there. For years, I have been mocked, scorned, ridiculed for all the Sonic Rose leaks I was talking about. You know, the videos I made about it. And now, all of my deniers can shut up, because it's true. This was a Sanemi themed game. Now, I know after playing the game, Sonic had more chemistry with Knuckles than Amy, but the proof is right here. So I don't know why people are denying. Like, this dates back to when the trailers were first shown and the voice Sonic was hearing people like, that's not Amy, that's that human with the pink hair, or some other person, or that's Tails. And just people kept on being in denial, but now people can finally shut up about that. I actually want to bet with someone else too, and he actually owes me money because I was finally right. But that's not the only thing I was right about, but let's continue. You know, a lot of leaks that ended up being real that I covered, and there's some things that I was wrong on, and gladly so, because there's some things that were just too outrageous, like Frontiers rebooting the entire Sonic canon. I'm so glad that wasn't real, because instead it only made the canon better, and it's like it's going to improve on the past. It's not just going to retcon anything or everything, which actually would have been the easiest way to go, to just start fresh. But instead, Ian Flynn was owning up to the past mistakes of previous writers to build a better future, and I really like that. Now, you guys can look through my playlist of Sonic Frontiers, you know, as much as you want. I'm not going to cover everything because it's like 80 videos that I made, 80 plus videos. So, but like just skimming through here, there's a lot of things I talked about that came true, about like Titans, Sonic's friends being ghosts. There were other things too, like Sonic having amnesia, that was scrapped. That story is actually found in the files of this game, but Sega didn't commit to it because this game was kind of rushed, and I will get to that later. You know, I think the biggest thing we got wrong was about, you know, Sonic having a super form besides Supersonic, Hypersonic. That's quite disappointing too. I'll get to that as well. But yeah, there's just a lot of things here, you know, a lot of things we got right, and then there's a lot of things also that we got wrong. And Sonic being the villain, I like that. You know, Sage not really being a villain, it was Sonic because he was listening to the AI voice. That was just cool. Like, I liked how it turned out in this game. I didn't like the execution. I didn't like how it ended. I think it could have ended better. Now, the Emeralds lore. I really liked how they implemented the Ancients in this game. You know, like how the Ancients are kind of like distant relatives of Chaos, and how the Ancients brought over the Chaos Emeralds with them. It's crazy because back in 2016, I did a Sonic theory talking about the ancient astronauts or the ancient Babylonians creating and bringing over the Chaos Emeralds. Like, since then, I always knew that Chaos Emeralds were not native to Sonic's planet. I knew they came from somewhere else. But I didn't know that it was made from Ancients, and I didn't know that the Master Emerald was native to Sonic's planet. But since Chaos is inside the Master Emerald and Chaos is the relative of the Ancients, I'm guessing the Master Emerald is also not native to Sonic's planet too. I think that might be covered in a future game, but if Chaos is a distant relative to the Ancients, I think the Master Emerald is from someplace else. But yeah, this just opens a lot of doors to new theories and stories. Now, one thing that is kind of confusing is the similarities with this in Unleashed. Just like, remember Unleashed story, the whole Gaia temples was made since the dawn of time, and it was made to contain the emeralds for when Dark Gaia acts up, so Light Gaia can counter that and keep things out of balance. So I was like, okay, how would that work if the Chaos Emeralds were not even from Earth or Sonic's planet? But then again, you know, the Ancients, it says they predate even the ancient Babylonians and the Echidnas. And we all know that predates the humans. And I think it was the human beings that created the temple. So the Ancients predate before that. But then Light Gaia and Dark Gaia are also eons old too. So I don't know, is that a plot hole? I'm not sure. I don't know. But it definitely has to be related. And I think Ian Flynn has an answer to that. Because when all the Chaos Emeralds combine in the temples, it forms like a Titan. Remember that Titan when Chip forms like the Light Gaia Titan and you fight Dark Gaia for a bit? That reminds me of the Titans that the Ancients created to guard the Emeralds and Starfall Islands. They're very similar. So I think the lore of this game is more interesting than the actual story. There's so much theory potential after this. You know, if I was still doing Sonic theories, I would go ham on this. But alas, they're all in my Frontiers and Origins playlist like I mentioned before. So I may discuss more about the story in a separate video because I really want to get into the gameplay. But the story was pretty good, not great. Definitely could have been better if Sega gave Sonic Team more time to work on this game and didn't cut corners. Ian Flynn can do way better than this. And this almost feels like Ian Flynn swooped in while Pontaff were writing the story and had to rewrite things to save the story. Or most likely it feels like he was just in charge of the dialogue, not the full story, as I heard before. I think the overall story came from Sega of Japan. So that's why it kind of feels, you know, underwhelming at times, especially the end with the end, no pun intended. So yeah, now let's talk about the characters. Starting with Sonic. Now, you know, when I first heard these characters, especially Roger Craig Smith as Sonic, their voice was very low. And at first, I was like, I'm not sure if I like this. But the more I heard it, the more it grew on me. And I really love it. I think this is his best voice acting in Sonic ever. You know, it kind of reminds me of Sonic Colors. When I first heard Roger Craig Smith's voice, it took me a while to get used to it. But I like it. I think this is the most emotional. This is the most acting he's done for Sonic. I really liked it. My problem with Sonic is he doesn't really grow by the end of the game. You know, they really go the Goku route with Sonic. Like, you know, I've been wanting a shonen Sonic, and I feel like they went all the way with him because, like, just like Goku, Sonic had very little character development. All his other friends had character development except Sonic. So I don't know how much I feel about that. And it's like Sonic could have at least reflected on Sage's sacrifice. He should have been touched that Sage, this creation of Eggman, sacrificed her life to save Sonic. It's sad because like Eggman is going to be devastated, but Sonic didn't give a shit. He was just like, oh, that was a great adventure, guys, let's go. You know, they even forgot Big the cat, but who cares, it's Big. And I don't know how Big ended up there, so, but yeah, I feel like Sonic could have been written better towards the end. Now Amy, this is the best Amy's been in any game. You know, I liked how mature she was. And, you know, throughout the whole game, she was concerned about the Coco, which was a plot device because it showed how, you know, a lot of them moved on, or a lot of them had to move on and pretty much die so they can cross over. then they showed the symbol a lot anytime they die, but up till now I still don't really know what that symbol means. Now I heard from other people that it's like a symbol of moving on, peace, or something like that, but I don't know. You know, that symbol also appeared at the end when Eggman was trying to revive Sage, so I guess we'll learn more about it later. I'm pretty sure this game is going to get a sequel. Knuckles, I really like Knuckles in this game, much better than the try-hard Knuckles in Forces. They were trying to make him like a war general, a leader, but in this one I really like Knuckles, you know? Brought him back to his roots of wanting to do things on his own, working with Sonic, and I could sense that rivalry with Sonic and Knuckles. Reminded me of Goku and Piccolo. I liked it. Really loved their chemistry. It was actually even more than Amy. And then you have Tails. Tails really atoned for his sins in this game. Ian Flynn really grew Tails in this game, because Tails, you know, Tails was going through, I wouldn't even call it a midlife crisis, but he was definitely going through a crisis because he felt like he's been a burden to Sonic for a long time, because he's just been a pussy, you know, for several games, Forces especially. He talks about how he cowered instead of helping Sonic when, you know, he was getting jumped by Infinite. And then even Lost World, you know, Generations Colors, even Unleashed is when Tails started progressing as a character. And I like how in the end of the game, Tails tells Sonic that he's going to go solo for a while to find himself and to grow more as a character. So I really liked how Tails was portraying this game. I know some people didn't like it because they don't like the fact that, you know, previous terrible interpretations of Tails is being acknowledged in this game. But it's like, nah, you have to acknowledge the good and the bad. That's the only way you can grow. And I have a lot of respect for Ian Flynn for acknowledging the setbacks in writing, then, you know, totally ignoring it, which is what I expected him to do. Then Eggman. Like I said, Eggman, when I first heard Mike Pollock, I didn't so much like the direction he took Eggman, because the voice direction, because Eggman was a bit more toned down. Even in 06, which was made to be more of a realistic interpretation, Eggman still sounded like Eggman. He still sounds like Eggman in this game, but he's more toned down, especially when he shows his love and affection for Sage, because he sees Sage as a daughter. You know, you see a lot more emotion in Eggman than any Sonic game, so it definitely grew on me, and I really like it. I think this is the most emotional of Eggman. Like, I mean, this is not like my favorite interpretation of Eggman, because, you know, I like Eggman being a villain. But I think Eggman deserves a break, especially after Forces. He took over the whole damn world in Sonic Forces, so, you know, he deserved a bit of a break in this game. I knew he was going to take a backseat too. And then Sage, you know, I am totally certain that Sega was inspired by the whole Eggette or Omelette, you know, that whole meme that became like a fan character that started from Sonic Mania about Eggette, like she's supposed to be like Dr. Robotnik's surrogate daughter or something. You know, she's supposed to be like Bowser Jr. is to Bowser in the Mario games, and I feel like Sega was inspired by that and made Sage, which is cool because I totally was not expecting that at all, and I like that. I want to see more of Sage. I hope she's revived, and I know that might make her sacrifice be all for nothing, but I mean, come on, look at Shadow. I want to see more of Sage. I want that dynamic like Bowser and Bowser Jr. And the end, the AI villain. Now, I don't think she was done that well, or he or they, however you want to interpret, because Sonic calls the end a he, but her voice sounds like a she, so I would just call the end they. But yeah, you know, the end, I see what they were going for, and I really like how it ended up being, but I don't know, I don't think the end was executed that well as the villain. And then in the end, no pun intended, the end was just like a planet, and I don't think they got that point across well, because I was like, wait, where's the end? Wait, Sonic and Sage are fighting a fucking planet? I mean, they tried with this one, but I don't think they stuck the landing that much. But yeah, overall, I liked Ian Flynn's. I like how he saved this story a lot with the callbacks. Like when I saw that callback to Sonic 3 and Knuckles, or Sonic Adventure, even Sonic Lost World, I was like, yo, man, Flynn is really connecting everything. And then, you know, you see Tangle mentioned by Sonic, and then even Amy mentioned Styx in the end, and it's like, whoa, is everything canon in this game? That's crazy. You know, like Sonic IDW was supposed to be canon with the games. And then Sega, I don't know what they said. I forgot what they said a couple years ago, but they were saying that, oh, IDW Comics is its own thing. And that pissed me off, because it's like, wait, the IDW Comics literally starts after the events of Sonic Forces. How can you just, you know, ignore all that great storytelling and just stick to the game stories, which is pretty lame and weak? but I like how everything's integrated now with the IDW comics, which means Frontiers happens after the events of the Metal Virus saga, and maybe even the Imposter Syndrome. I don't know. I stopped reading before the Imposter Syndrome, but it's great. Now, what confuses me is Styx, because Styx is part of the Sonic Boom canon, and Sonic Boom is not the same as video game Sonic. But then again, you see Styx in like the party games, like the Olympics, Mario and Sonic Olympic games, so I don't know. It's funny because the Archie Sonic fans, that's still not canon with the games. You know, you're not going to see Sally and the Freedom Fighters. I like how Ian Flynn takes even the negative things and turns them into positive things. Sort of like what he did with the Deadly Six in the Metal Virus saga. He made them menacing, especially Zavok. I really liked it. And yeah, speaking of the ending, you know, the ending was quite disappointing though. I'm not even going to talk about the boss, how it was like a space shooter. Supersonic wasn't hypersonic, and it's like this whole game feels like a shonen. You know, it follows a lot of the shonen tropes. You play Supersonic like 4 times, fighting different villains from Giganto to Wyvern to Knight to Supreme. And then in the end, when you fight the end, you think that the end would be too powerful for Supersonic. He would have to upgrade to Hypersonic. This is the perfect game to have reintroduced Hypersonic, especially that it dealt with the Emeralds and the Master Emerald. Could have shown Hypersonic at least this once, but they didn't do that. I understand Sega doesn't want to continue bringing up new power-ups for Sonic because it'll make it too similar to Dragon Ball Z. I get it, but Hypersonic already exists. And Sonic has had power-ups before, like the storybook games. Just bring back Hypersonic for this game. You know, I don't understand that. A lot of people are disappointed on that. It's like, come on, man. Hypersonic would have been awesome to see. It's evident that the last half of the game was very rushed. A lot of data miners can prove this as well. Because if you read here, it says unused dialogue from the original version of the Island 4, internally referred to as Tower Island. So Rhea Island was supposed to be called Tower Island. Now, it involved you entering the Ark of the Ancients to get the last Chaos Emerald. Hear this.
It is what remains of the Ancients' world ship. It was their ark to this world.
I don't have the best history with arcs.
Sonic, I believe I can access the ship's ruins. Join me.
I need to get in there and get that emerald.
So yeah, I'm going to get into this later on in the video about how there should have only been 4 islands instead of 5. Rhea Island should have been the last island. Like even the Amnesia storyline, like I talked before, that was dropped. And you can hear in some of the lines here where Sonic forgets his own name.
My name is...
That doesn't make sense in the context of the game that we got, because it doesn't show anything about Sonic losing his memory, but the egg memos in this game offer more context to the story. So I wish they were in Eggman's ship besides Big's fishing. Like every time Sonic sees Eggman's ship in the Starfall Islands, that always confused me. It's like, that would have been cool if you picked up egg memos around those ships, because back then I thought the ship was supposed to be Sonic's way of transport between the islands. Kind of like how Mario Odyssey, that hat, or I forgot what it's called, the flying hat ship was like his way of transport throughout the kingdoms. And also the lines in the game, like it's crazy how you have to wait a good 10 minutes before you start hearing Sonic talking or monologuing about random things. I didn't get that at all. I barely heard most of the things I'm hearing when I, you know, watch YouTube and see people do that, because a lot of people had to just be idle with Sonic for over 10 minutes just to get that. I think Sega needs to fix that in a patch, because ain't nobody waiting over 10 minutes to hear Sonic talk. But yeah, that's all I have to say for the story. Huge improvement. Really enjoyed it. It's good, not great. Now let's move over to the gameplay. Now let's talk about the controls and physics. First and foremost, the controls. These are the best controls in a Boost Sonic game ever in the open world. Like, dare I say, this rivals the adventure games in terms of controls, especially with the custom sliders. You know, as far as 3D Sonic is, this is one of the best controls ever. And it's the highlight of this game, which is the open world controls and the physics of Sonic. Now, Sonic Team really spent a lot of time on this aspect, especially because if Sonic's controls didn't work, then the entire game would fall apart. Now, the cyberspace controls. Now, this is where the game dips, because those physics were very mid, and they aren't good at all. I can't tell which is worse, the physics in cyberspace or in Forces, because the level design saves the cyberspace stages. You know, the air boost isn't as bad as in Forces. It's not broken like in Forces. But the level design, we all know they're ripped mostly from other games, Sonic Adventure 2, Generations Unleashed, with only a few new level designs in the game. And those new level designs are actually really good. I actually like them even more than Forces. But yeah, the physics are just not that great. And I know a lot of people say the physics in Forces is better. So I don't know. I have to think about that. There are momentum physics in this game when it comes to the open world. Like if you look at it right here, this is momentum physics. Now the camera isn't perfect, but it's the best and most free 3D camera ever for a 3D Sonic game. You know, this is like the first time you can use a 3D 60 camera this good, so I really appreciate that. And the graphics are the best in a Sonic game yet. I don't know what some critics are saying when they talk about the graphics, but the graphics are a huge improvement here. They completely blow Unleashed out of the water now. Like even Sky Sanctuary, the graphics for Sky Sanctuary are top tier. They're so good looking in cyberspace, because the last time we saw Sky Sanctuary is in Generations. Now go back to Generations, compare that with Frontiers. Frontier Sky Sanctuary looks much better. That being said, I wish more effort was put into the animation like Unleash. Like we need a top tier intro like Unleash, you know, we need something like that again. I know Sonic Team made that type of intro because like they thought that would be their last Sonic game, because this was after 06. But I want another intro like that, or another action set piece like that. You know, the whole like Sonic side mouth, they gotta fix that, because Sonic looks very weird with the side mouth sometimes. And yeah, they just need to fix the animation. In some scenes, you know, the animation feels kind of stiff. And like I said, they really push the hell out of the animation with the models. So I think this is the best animation when it comes to these models. I think they've been using these models for Sonic games since Lost World or Forces, I forget. But yeah, the way they animate the models here is much better than what they did with Forces, because with Forces they kept on using Sonic's eyelids to show expressions, and it looks so annoying. It looks like Sonic has like ptosis or something like that. Oh yeah, and I almost forgot, also the poppin'. The poppin' honestly was not a big problem for me. Maybe it's because I was playing on the Nintendo Switch, and you know, it's downgraded graphics and it's 30 frames per second. So like there was poppin', but it wasn't that much of an issue for me. It did look ugly though, seeing poppin'. Like there's nothing pretty about poppin'. And I hope in the next Sonic game, Sonic Team can fix that. And if they can't, at least make it fade in. That's the thing a lot of Lego games do when they're open world. Try to fix the pop-in, and if you can't, just make it fade in, because pop-in is bad. And I know people who played on 60 frames and on games with higher graphics, it was more obvious, and sometimes it got in the way of their gameplay or it messed them up. Yeah, alright, now let's talk about the level design. Let's start with cyberspace. I already said before, the level design is very fun, unlike Forces, because it's literally ripped from previous games. The assets are rehashed and borrowed. Now, I personally don't mind it as much since it's the theme of cyberspace, but with the mid controls, it leaves a little to be desired, you know? And obviously, it pales in comparison to the original games that it borrowed so heavily from. And the 2D stages were definitely the weakest. But I do like how the 3D stages were spliced 3D sections from Generations or Unleashed, while the 2D sections were their own stages, spliced sections from Unleashed and Generation. So I liked it. The 3D stages were 3D all the way. I wish we had that in Generations. You know, I wish Modern Sonic was completely 3D and Classic Sonic was completely 2D, but whatever. But I am glad critics are criticizing all the rehashes a lot more this time, because it's overkill now. For a game that tries new things like Sonic Frontiers, there's hardly anything original in this game, besides the first 3 open zone islands. The cyberspace, there's only 4 themes in it: Green Hill, Chemical Plant, Sky Sanctuary, and the city. The city is new, but Green Hill, Chemical Plant, Sky Sanctuary, they're old. They're from Generations. And all this time I thought we were going to get new themes, but we didn't. It's like, why couldn't Sonic Team just reuse level themes that were ripped off, like Green Forest? Just use Green Forest, or Metal Harbor, City Escape, etc. I mean, you have City Escape from Generations, so just reuse that. I don't know, it's just very, very lazy what they did. At least using all those assets, like showing Green Forest, showing, you know, Missouri or Windmill Isle, would have made the cyberspace a bit more interesting to show all these other levels revisited. without it being the same layouts recycled from Green Hill, Chemical Plant, etc. But when it comes to the new cyberspace stages, I guess it wouldn't make sense to have brand new layouts for the cyberspace stages, since the whole point of cyberspace is your memories pooled out. You know, it's supposed to be revisiting your memories, but whatever. But yeah, the best levels in cyberspace was definitely from Sonic Adventure 2, because they were kind of newish. You know, those were like non-boost stages. Those were like the adventure gameplay. So to see that reimagined in boost gameplay was quite interesting. But anytime we saw something from Unleashed and Generations, it was always inferior to the originals, because I mean, they're all boost games. But yeah, the PC mods really fix the cyberspace stages and make them more fun to play. So when I play Sonic Frontiers again, I'm definitely going to get it on Steam, and I'm going to use those mods to fix it. Now, on to the open zone. Now, this is where the bulk of the game lies and where most of the good stuff are. You know, it's very fun to traverse the levels, especially in Ares Island, but most of the platforming is the rails and all that stuff in the sky. Speaking of which, the platforming, you know, that was something that was a huge debate back then in the marketing of this game. Now, I've said in previous videos how the game was more open world than open zone in the past, and that received a lot of negative reception from playtesters, and Sonic Team added more platforming sections in the game, which is good and bad. The good thing is there's so many platforming sections to discover, you know, and to get collectibles and tokens. It's almost endless. It's like a big playground, never gets boring, never gets tiring. The bad thing is most of the platforming are in the sky, and they're not natural. The assets seem tacked on, because that's exactly what Sonic Team did. None of the springers, rails, zip lines, etc. fit in their environment. None of them. They're the same in every single island zone. And you know, back then with Sonic games, like even like games like Shadow the Hedgehog or Sonic 06, all of those like little level gimmicks and assets, they always looked catered to their zone. Like if you see something in the jungle, you'll see like foliage around it, or you'll see something like rusty metal, you know. So I miss things like that. I miss those little details. Like even a critic talked about that in his video, because it prevents things from feeling samey. So other people have noticed this too, and it reminds me of you know, Mario Maker or Sonic Studio type of level designer, just like Sonic Team copy pasting all these things in each open zone environment. So yeah, it definitely looks tacked on. So I don't need to elaborate much on the whole platforming issue, because I talk about it in my previous videos, and I'm going to link it right here so you guys can see it. But yeah, platforming is much better in the open zone than cyberspace because of the custom sliders. I don't know why Kishimoto didn't implement that in the cyberspace stages. He said he just made that standard. I guess he was too afraid of how broken the cyberspace stages would be if you played them, you know, based on your custom sliders. But that's something they need to fix in the future. You know, they need to figure that out. Now the game design, let's talk about that. Now Frontier starts out very strong in terms of the open zones and loses steam in the second half after the first 3 islands. It starts showing in Island 3 and Chaos Island. Chronos is fun and mostly easy. Even on hard mode, it's mostly easy if you know what you're doing, especially with the bonuses you get in standard or deluxe editions. Now I avoided the deluxe edition because I wanted a challenge when I played the game, but I got the standard edition on Switch, and I still had some collectibles. I had like extra tokens, extra Amy hearts, and because, you know, I went to 100% the cyberspace stages, I was unlocking like 3, 4, almost 5 Chaos Emeralds almost immediately. So yeah, that made me really zip through Chronos Island the first time, you know. But you can only use those the first time. If you play it again, you got to start from scratch and getting all those collectibles. Now Ares Island, I think Ares has the strongest design or game design, and it's easy to get lost if you don't solve missions and puzzles to open the world up. But that wasn't a bad thing for me. It was more like it was just my fault for not navigating well and doing more missions. But yeah, Chaos Island looks quite epic, but almost every platforming section is locked behind 2D, and it gets really annoying because unlike Mario games where, you know, you do 2.5D like Mario 3D World, you can't get out of these 2D sections in Chaos Island unless you backtrack or luckily boost out of it. You get locked in it. So I think that's very lazy design, you know, to be honest. No offense, but what was Sonic Team thinking, you know? I feel like they were just running out of time, so they just locked Sonic in a lot of those 2D sections. Every single, platforming area, almost every single platforming area in Chaos Island is locked behind 2D. I mean, you might as well call that 2D Island because it's barely 3D, which is crazy. Only Sonic Team does an open world and make it more 2D than 3D. I never knew that was possible, until I went to Chaos Island. And also, Chaos Island is hard to traverse too if you don't solve puzzles because the islands are split up. So it wasn't too much of a hassle for me, but it gets really annoying when the camera angle shifts and you're locked in 2D because you can't see what's ahead of you. So to traverse the island the first time is really annoying because of those issues. Now, Rhea Island. Now, I surprisingly like this island because of the challenging platforming. But honestly, it should have been the last island, and it shouldn't have been Chronos broken up. It should have looked different. This island fooled us because we thought it would be a snowy island. Remember that one video where I covered all those discs and it showed like the fourth island being blue and it showed like those towers? I thought it was going to be like icy, polar lights or something like that. I didn't know those were just the towers from Rhea Island. They fooled us. So yeah, this is more of a story-based island. So it should have been a boss rush type of island. Like, before you enter each tower, before you climb it, you have to fight a guardian. Like all the guardians you fought before, you can fight them on hard mode. Kind of like what they did with Uranus Island, but they should have implemented it in Rhea Island. So it should have been like a boss rush type of island because I was loving the challenge. Unlike Eggman Land and Unleashed, where I hated it and it was too long. Rhea Island, you can beat it in about 30 to 40 minutes, depending on how fast you are. This game felt like it was reaching a climax at Rhea Island, especially with the story as well. And it should have went straight to the final boss after this, but I don't know, I guess they wanted Eggman to work with Sonic. That's why they included an extra island. They wanted that working together with Sonic and Eggman and Sonic and Sage. But I didn't like it, because Uranus Island, to me, is the worst island. For the sole reason that it's rehashed Chronos on hard mode, and it's just a huge pace breaker. This is where I really felt the game just dragging and grinding to a halt. It was just to prolong the game. This island honestly should have been DLC, because it felt like a DLC island. And this is what I feared since that video, that what the fuck video I made when I was talking about the last two islands revealed, and I was disappointed how they were just recycled Chronos islands. Even the heart tokens were recycled from Chronos for Sage, which didn't make sense at all since all of Sonic's friends were rescued. They kind of went back to cyberspace so they could save Sonic from dying. But yeah, the bosses were interesting in Uranus Island, honestly, especially Ghost. I really liked the Ghost boss. The terrain was cooler, and I also loved the music. Like, the music for Uranus was just awesome. Before it changes back to Chronos, too bad. It changes back to Chronos before you even complete the island halfway. This should have just been part of Chronos Island, to be honest, or locked as DLC, because I don't think we're going to get a new island as DLC. I honestly don't think so. Because if we were going to get a new island as DLC, why couldn't that just be part of this game? Now, the cyberspace levels were actually at their best in the last island, in Uranus Island. That's not saying much, but still. There were 9 cyberspace stages, and I think only 3 of them were rehashed, but the rest of the 6 were original, and I really liked it. Even that 30-second cyberspace stage. So yeah, next time I play this game and I get to Uranus Island, I'm just going to do Biggs fishing and just cheese my way through that island, because that island, man, getting all the tokens is a bitch because it's so many tokens to get and it just drags on and on. And I was getting restless when I recorded that for my long play. Yeah, you can tell Sonic Team ran out of budget here and didn't have enough time. Sega sold this game as 5 islands when it was really only 3 islands. Even Eggman in his egg memo says 3 piddly islands, which is just Chronos, Ares, and Chaos. And Rhea being the story-based island and an extra Chronos island broken up. To me, that's false advertising, and that's a big issue that I have. There's nothing wrong with having only 3 islands and a boss rush area. I don't even mind not having a snowy island. It just didn't fit the game. And maybe Rhea could have been like a city wasteland like Crisis City, with those towers being like buildings. That would have been nice for the aesthetics, especially to show that the ancients actually were an advanced civilization. Now for the puzzles. Now I enjoyed them, I enjoyed the puzzles. They started off easy, but they got more challenging. The difficulty spike was very uneven though. I didn't mind the night missions though. I know a lot of people complain about some missions that you could only do at night. To me, that was never a problem because I never waited on them. Anytime it was nighttime, I just found one and did it immediately. Now, the pre-Titan or the pre-boss puzzles were a problem though, because like I said, the difficulty balance was just off and very uneven. Now, the Chronos final puzzle, I still don't understand. Sometimes I complete it in 3 to 5 minutes. Other times it takes me like 7 to 10 minutes. The Ares final puzzle was on some Lego type of shit. Very juvenile, very easy. All you do is just match the colors with the other colors. Like that's some toddler shit. Chaos final puzzle was a pain in the ass. The pinball stage, easily the worst one, because the pinball is locked to 5 million points, which is quite easy to get if you max out at 256 multiplier by getting the red rings. However, you have no control over the ball falling out of bounds, and you only have 3 tries. It's unfair, completely unfair, and a cheap way to prolong the game and increase the difficulty. You know, they should have at least given you infinite amounts of pinballs, and if not, then block those 2 sides, you know? And the first time I played it, I lost so much. They put yellow triangles to help me out. I didn't know that. You know, I don't know if any of you guys had that, but like they put the triangles there so when my ball fell, it just got shot back up and gave me another chance. They're like, hey yo, gamer guy, you suck, here's another shot. And the Uranus final puzzle is just another space shooter. You know, there's 4 of those little Galaga space shooters in total, and it gets really repetitive, especially the final boss, which is disappointing. You know, that's why when I play it again, I just do it on normal mode. I did that in my long play. I just played it normal mode so I can get straight to the, you know, the quick time event, because it just felt better paced than doing the you know, the little space shooter. It fits more. The only thing missing is the epic final boss music and the monologue of the end, which I really liked her monologue. You know, that's Ian Flynn's writing at its finest. Now the combat was very fun and engaging, better than the slow clunky werehog. You know, I've just got to be honest, guys, you know, all these moves mattered. Whereas the werehog has all of these moves and none of them are necessary to learn. You just spam the attack button and there will be some quick time event prompts later. You know, the combat in Frontiers isn't perfect. It's not even the greatest thing, but compared to the other 2 Sonic games that had combat, Unleashed and Boom Rise of Lyric, this one's the best one yet. So just ignore the critics when it comes to that. Sonic can be OP in this game though, when it comes to combat, especially if you know what you're doing. So the future games should balance the combat out a bit more, but I love the simplicity of the combat here, you know. Some button prompts were annoying though, especially that I would hit them on accident, or some were hard to trigger. Now I was more worried about the combat when I first heard it before in the leaks, because I was thinking like, oh crap, you know, Sonic games never get the combat down right, not even in fighting games like Sonic the Fighters or Sonic Battle. But I liked it here, I really did. And I definitely want to see Sega and Sonic Team expand on it more. Now the parry is a little too easy though. Before I thought it was hard to pull off. You know, then I realized it was just my right trigger, my R trigger button that was the defective, because it kept sticking every time I pressed it, so it was malfunctioning. That Wyvern boss was a pain in the ass because of it, and I spent a long time trying to defeat the Wyvern boss because of my defective Joy-Con. But yeah, Sonic Team needs to make the parry more time-based and make it harder to achieve, because holding it down makes the combat a bit too easy, and many times I don't use it so I can have a challenge. Now upgrading with Hermit Coco will help you tackle the enemies in the later islands easier, because I was getting my ass whipped by the white enemies like the white ninja. But fuck Elder Coco, because Sega needs to fix that and not make it one speed level at a time. You know, it's very annoying and time consuming. You can just be there forever just upgrading one level at a time. I don't know why they did that. So I just stopped doing it. Upgrading rings is kind of pointless. Besides speed, just going to Elder Coco is kind of pointless. 400 rings is more than enough, especially if you're good. And it'll take longer to get the power boost, so why even bother? Just focus on upgrading your power, defense, and the speed if you want. Now that little roulette thing that happens at nighttime with the Starfall roulette thing, it's good for racking up more purple coins for Big the Cat, but it is a nuisance when you're busy exploring the open zone or looking for objectives. Like, Sonic Team, please fix this in a patch, because it's just in the way. I can't turn it off. It obscures my vision when I'm trying to platform or look at the sky, or, you know, look at my meter. Especially if you're trying to find your markers to see, you know, where you gotta go. You just can't see that, and it's just very annoying. Now the game length, like I said before, this game should have been shorter. Should have only been 3 islands and a final boss rush island, which is Rhea. Uranus was unnecessary padding. Couple of pre-boss puzzles like the pinball that were rage inducing and should have been cut. Sega tried a lot of things to see what works, and some of them stick, others don't. but unlike Unleashed, more things worked here than didn't work. Also, because the open worlds or open zones were treated as actual zones, hence open zones, there was no backtracking at all, which was very good. You know, in Unleashed you had to do a lot of backtracking, and I'm not too fond of that. You don't even do that in Mario Odyssey, so I don't like backtracking. And as for post-game DLC content, Sega announced that there will be several DLCs for Frontiers for the rest of 2023, and I love to hear that. You know, this game needs longevity until 2024, because previous Sonic games lacked longevity, like Sonic Forces and Team Sonic Racing, for instance, in favor of their mobile counterparts. So I'm glad they're not doing that with Frontiers. There's not even a mobile version of Frontiers, so I do like that. Even Lost World had DLC. You know, they had 3 DLC levels, so I want to see that for Frontiers. I still don't think we're getting another open zone though, but I like to see more mod skins like Odyssey. I mean, come on, Sega. And maybe more cyberspace stages. I don't know. I mean, we already have 30 cyberspace stages, even though someone said we were supposed to have 50. I mean, do I really want it though, since the physics were off? I don't know. Just gotta wait and see. In conclusion, I really enjoyed Sonic Frontiers. You know, I had issues with it, especially towards the end, but it's the first 3D Sonic game since Generations that I've replayed multiple times. Now I'm on my 3rd playthrough doing it another way. Now this is the first time I was going for 100%. Second time I was trying to beat it as fast as possible for my channel walkthrough. And now this time I'm trying to see how much I can cheese the system through Big's fishing. Now, do I think this game is better than Sonic Generations? Honestly, no. But it's definitely better than Forces and Lost World, making it right up there with Gen. This even beats Colors for me, because unlike that game, I want to see Sega continue with the Sonic Frontiers formula. I never wanted Colors level design, meta humor, and the Wisp to be a lasting mainstay for the franchise for a whole decade. But that's unfortunately what we got. Sonic Colors' score has dropped for me over the years. It's a game that hasn't aged as gracefully as Generations, mainly because of Colors' legacy. You know, even some Call Me Johnny's re-review of Colors wasn't as glowing as the first review he did of the game. Now, I'm glad to hear from Iizuka that this formula is what they'll be doing for the next decade for Sonic, and I pray to God that Sega doesn't change the formula all over again like they did with Lost World and do some weird experimentation bullshit because some random critic complained about something ridiculous. Back then, I used to bag on Sonic Team a lot, saying that they can't make a decent 3D Sonic game to save their life anymore since Generations, especially since they lost a lot of their team members. But with only 60 people working on Frontiers, all that crunch time that shows in this game, and Iizuka pleading with Sega to delay this game for another year, it's evident now that the problem with these Sonic games isn't Sonic Team, it's Sega, and they need to be held accountable. You know, since Forces, we've gotten nothing but subpar to terrible Sonic games. You know, Forces was disappointing, Team Sonic Racing was mid, Sonic Colors Ultimate was a disaster, and Origins was just average. But thankfully, Frontiers is good. And now I can proudly say that the curse is broken. You know, that whole curse I talked about, like 2017 Sonic Mania was the great game, Forces was the bad game. Now in this case, Frontiers is the good game, Origins is the meh game, or the average game. And when I started this game, I was going to give it an 8 out of 10, because this game is definitely not a 9 out of 10. But due to all the flaws and things that needed to be fixed or patched, I can't in good faith give it that high of a grade. I would have settled for a 7 out of 10 like IGN, because I think that is a perfect score for this game. But I just enjoy this game a lot, so I'm going to give it a 7.5 out of 10. This game has great potential, and I can't wait to see what's in store for Sonic's future. But please, Sega, treat your flagship franchise better and give Sonic Team more time and resources. I heard they're looking to expand their team, so that's a good sign, especially since this game is selling well. Alright guys, that wraps up for my review. That's all I have to say about Sonic Frontiers. So let me know, what do you think about this game in the comments down below. Do you think this game is great? What would you rate this game? And what do you think about my review? Also, stay tuned for Sonic Rebound Episode 6. I thought that was going to come out this month, but looks like that's going to come out next month. So I got that coming out, plus an extra secret animation that I've been working on. I'm not going to let you guys know about that yet until it comes out, so stay tuned for all of that. Alright, that's all I have for now, so take care. And until next time, I'm out.